Exposed to the sinister, haunting rules of my cursed grandfather in the Alaskan wilderness. Nora's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white as the jagged peaks of the Alaskan mountains loomed closer. Dark clouds swirled ominously above, casting long shadows on the winding road ahead. Her heart hammered in her chest. The air felt heavy, oppressive, as if the woods themselves were watching. She glanced at Tommy in the back seat, his innocent chatter echoing like a melodic but eerie soundtrack to her growing unease. Reconnecting after her estranged grandfather's death felt like a hollow promise, buried under layers of fear. The cabin came into view, a rickety structure hunched beneath the towering firs. Memories flooded back, laughter, warmth, but also the chill of secrets long buried. Dust motes danced in the waning light as they stepped inside. The musty smell hit her, thick with neglect. She forced a smile for Tommy, tucking a stray hair behind her ear while panic gnawed at her insides. "This will be fun," she chirped, though her voice betrayed her. As they explored, Nora found old photographs, faces smiling back at her, frozen in time. Their eyes seemed to follow her with judgment. She pushed the thought aside. Time to clean, time to heal. But the unease simmered, lurking in the corners of her mind. Then, she stumbled upon a battered trunk. Inside lay a journal, pages yellowed and frayed. She opened it with trembling fingers, frantic scribbles covered the pages. Rules, warnings about dark entities lurking in the woods. Her grandfather's paranoia scrawled out like a confession. Never invite them and they come when the wind howls. Trust no shadow. Nora felt a chill, dismissing it as madness. An old man's superstitions couldn't hold her captive. Tommy's laughter filled the air as he played with imaginary friends. She abruptly shushed him, unable to shake her anxiety. Days blurred, their isolation felt thicker. Food supplies dwindled as her mind spiraled. Shadows flickered in her periphery, and she flinched at every whisper of wind. Tommy started naming things in the woods, strange names rolling off his tongue like songs. "Mom, the trees told me their names." He laughed, but she felt the weight of dread crashing down. They were her grandfather's names that echoed in her nightmares. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The waves of fear engulfed her deeper. A neighbor's uneasy gaze confirmed the whispers swirling in town. Families avoided her granddad's name. The past was dangerous. Control slipped through her fingers. Tommy's talk turned darker. He drew pictures of figures lurking amidst the trees, dark, shadowy forms gnawing at her sanity. Each night the whispers grew louder. The woods felt alive, as if they were closing in, taunting her with ancestral secrets. Night fell heavy, and as she tucked Tommy into bed, he whispered about a figure outside. "I saw him, Mom. It looks like Grandpa." Terror washed over Nora like ice water. The flickering candlelight danced around the room, shadows lengthening. The whispered names of her family echoed in her mind like forgotten prayers. She stood paralyzed, staring into the yawning darkness of the woods, heart racing, breath hitching. A question clawed at her: how could she protect her son from the malevolence lurking just beyond the trees? The heavy weight of ancestral secrets shrouded them both, their safety slipping into the shadows as the wind howled through the branches. Nora's eyes darted back to Tommy, whose innocent face reflected a mixture of excitement and fear. His small hands clutched a paper he had drawn on the monsters from his drawing seemed to leap to life in the flickering candlelight. "They're not real, sweetheart," she whispered, though doubt spiraled within her. Silence enveloped the cabin, muffling even the faintest sounds outside. The wind howled, sending shivers through her spine. Her heartbeat felt like a drum in her ears, pounding faster as her instincts screamed for her to act. "Stay close," she told Tommy, her voice steadier than she felt. As she moved towards the window, a sudden gust rattled the glass. She peered outside, squinting into the darkness. The moon struggled to break through thick clouds, casting just enough light to reveal the encroaching trees. They stood like sentinels, unyielding and foreboding, stretching their limbs like skeletal fingers toward the cabin. "Mom," Tommy's voice cut through the quiet, barely above a whisper. "Can we play with Grandpa?" "No," she snapped, shaking her head. The fear surged again. She rushed toward the kitchen and lit another candle, as if the warm flicker might ward off the shadows. The journal, it haunted her thoughts. Never invite them, in those words circled like vultures in her mind. Had her grandfather's madness taken root in Tommy? She sat with her back to the door, watching her son draw again. The pictures spread across multiple sheets, each more disturbing than the last, figures with hollow eyes, mouths twisted into grotesque grins. Sickness settled in her stomach. "Tommy, honey, don't draw those anymore." "But they want me to," he protested, a frown marring his young face. "They say we have to play." "Play?" she echoed, dread coloring her tone. The boy's imagination was too vivid, pushing the boundaries of her already frayed nerves. "What do you mean?" "They like it when I draw them. They say if I don't, they'll get angry." Tommy looked up, his eyes wide, and for a moment, she saw something eerie reflected back, a look too old for his tender years. Nora felt cold sweat trickle down her back, slipping her hand into the pocket of her jeans, still trembling. She pulled out her grandfather's journal, the weight of it felt heavier than ever. "Tommy, listen, we don't want to anger anyone. How about we draw something else? Something nice." He shook his head. "They won't let us." A cloud passed over his face, and his smile faded, replaced by a deepening unease. The childish innocence seemed to ebb, and the air turned thick with tension. The candle flickered again, casting a dance of shadows along the wooden walls. Nora instinctively glanced toward the door. A rustling sound reached her ears, almost like whispers tumbling from the wind. She inhaled sharply as if the room suddenly constricted around her. A loud knock echoed, a heavy thud that caused her heart to jolt. She bolted from her seat. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. No answer came, only the sound of the wind mocking her fear. "Mom, let us go play with Grandpa." Tommy tugged at her sleeve, his eyes brightening. She could almost hear the figure her grandfather calling them into the shadows. "No. Stay away from the door," she snapped, panic rising. The knocking persisted, growing more insistent, more layered, as if others joined in. It wasn't just her grandfather anymore. It was something else, something deep and hungry lurking just past the threshold. "Tommy, we have to hide. Now." Panic surged as she grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the door. In that moment, she knew the forest wasn't the only place holding secrets. Something was trying to cross into their world, and she had no idea how to stop it. As they rushed to the back of the cabin, she glimpsed a shadow slipping past the window, tall and dark, and felt an overwhelming chill coursing through her veins. What had she invited in? And how could she stop it before it consumed them both? The answers clawed at her mind as the wind howled louder, echoing the warning of her grandfather's frantic words. The wind picked up, a chilling wail that crept through the cracks of the cabin like a living thing. Nora clutched Tommy's hand, dragging him away from the door. The shadows lengthened around them, twisting and shifting as if they were alive, weaving a web of darkness that threatened to ensnare them. "What do we do, Mom?" Tommy's voice was small, barely audible above the rising storm outside. He looked up at her, his eyes wide with a raw fear that cut through her like a knife. I don't know," she admitted, her heart racing in her chest. The pounding at the door intensified as if something were trying to force its way inside. With every heavy thud, she felt her resolve crumble. She couldn't let it in. "We need to find a way to hold it back." There was a rickety old closet in the corner, its door hanging ajar. She pushed Tommy toward it, her instincts sharp. "Hide in there. Don't make a sound." As he squeezed himself into the cramped space, she turned her back against the door, bracing herself for whatever was coming. Dark thoughts spiraled in her mind. Did she really believe their nightly games with invisible friends could have awakened something? She felt the bite of regret as she glanced back at her son, who was too young to be caught up in this horror. The knocking morphed into a scratching sound, clawing at the wood-like nails on a chalkboard. Her breath quickened. What had she invited in? Then, as if responding to her fear, the candles flickered violently. Shadows danced erratically, revealing fleeting glimpses of serpentine forms writhing just beyond the cabin walls. Terror clawed at her throat. She struggled to focus, to remember what her grandfather's journal had said, something about rules. Don't let them in. Her mind raced, grasping at fading memories. You have to play along, he had written in a shaking hand, but never willingly invite them in. Had Tommy's innocent whimsy reached out to them, beckoning them closer? Another loud bang on the door broke her train of thought. The wood splintered, and Nora felt panic swallow her whole. She glanced back at Tommy, a momentary glance, just to reassure herself that he was still there, still safe. Then there was silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that filled the cabin like a flooding tide. Each heartbeat echoed in her ears, drowning out the wind's howls. She strained her ears, hoping to catch the sound of rustling leaves or the crackle of the candle flames. And then came a voice. "Let us in, Nora. We want to play." The word slithered through the cracks, smooth yet sinister. It was the voice of her grandfather, and yet it felt wrong. The cadence was twisted, mocking, like a child playing dress-up in the skin of the dead. Her stomach turned as she fought the urge to answer. "I don't want to play," she heard herself say, the tremor in her voice betraying her resolve. "You're not welcome here." The door shuddered, then began to rattle against the frame. Desperate, she turned to the closet. "Tommy, don't move," she hissed. He peeked out, eyes reflecting the firelight. A flicker of understanding passed between them, an unspoken agreement, but then, a chill ran down her spine. Another shape appeared outside the window, not just a vague silhouette but a dark figure with features she couldn't distinguish. It raised its arm, pointing straight at her, a beckoning gesture. "Tommy," she breathed, dread creeping in again. "What do we do?" Suddenly, the door splintered, cracks spreading like veins through the wood. Nora's heart raced. One single moment, one break, and whatever was outside would pour in, sullying everything they held dear. And in the midst of the chaos, the candle flickered out, plunging them into darkness. With her breath caught in her throat, Nora knew they had only one chance left. She had to remember the rules, the warning. But it felt as if the shadows were closing in, drowning her in sinister whispers. What was next? Was it already too late? The pressure of the moment pressed heavily on her. Why had she ever brought Tommy here, in that heart-stopping moment before chaos unfurled? She heard the sweet, sickening sound of childish laughter floating through the darkness. Nora's heart thudded in her chest, the laughter ringing in her ears like broken glass. It twisted into her thoughts, mocking her fear. She wanted to scream but forced herself to breathe, to think. The air grew thick, smothering, laden with an oppressive darkness that seemed to pulsate. Shadows crowded at the edges of her vision, snaking closer. Each inch they took felt like a betrayal, as if the cabin itself conspired against her. "Tommy," she whispered, panic clawing her throat. The little boy's face glowed faintly from within the closet, eyes wide as saucers. He was straining to hear, to understand what was happening outside their feeble sanctuary. Then the whispers started. At first, she thought it was just the wind playing tricks, but deep down, she knew. "Come out to play, Tommy." The voice slithered through the crevices, dripping with malice. The way it twisted her son's name made her stomach churn, as if something grotesque lingered just beneath the surface. Nora gripped the doorknob tightly, knuckles white, feeling the wood splintering under the pressure from the outside. Fear pulsed in rhythmic waves through her, each heartbeat matching the relentless thud echoing from the door. Don't let it in. The words from her grandfather's journal flared up in her mind. But what if they were already too late? A crack appeared in the door, jagged and dark, like a mouth ready to consume them whole. Nora's instincts screamed at her to flee, but there was nowhere to go. She glanced to the side, into the closet, where Tommy was still crouched, terror painted over his tiny face. The sinister laughter rang out again, sending chills down her spine. It was becoming more pronounced, rising like a chorus, weaving a symphony of nightmares that left a bitter taste in her mouth. Nora stepped back, her leg bumping into the small table behind her, knocking over a dusty lamp that shattered on the floor. The noise reverberated in the silence that ensued. A voice hissed, cutting through the stillness, more demanding than before. It crept forward, sliding against the door, clawing, probing, testing the weakness of the barricade. They want you, Nora. They need you. Let us in desperation surged through her. I know you're not my father, she shouted into the darkness, her voice trembling. You're not welcome here. But the shadows laughed back, a high-pitched cackle that rattled through her bones. She felt as if she were caught in a spider's web, struggling against unseen threads that pulled tighter with every word she spoke. Suddenly, a gust of wind slammed against the door, shaking the cabin violently. The shadows retreated for an instant, as if pulled away by an unseen force. But just as quickly, they surged back, more determined, more chaotic. Nora's eyes darted around, searching for anything, any means of defense. The other set of doors that led to the back of the cabin could provide an escape if worst came to worst. But would it be worse than confronting what was outside? Mom, I'm scared. Tommy cried from the closet, and she hated the way his voice trembled, mirroring her own fear. She snapped back to her senses, squeezing her hands together. Stay quiet, Tommy. Stay still. As she kept watch, her heart raced faster, thudding so loudly she thought it might burst. In the depths of her mind, memories of her grandfather surfaced, his lessons about games, the rules, the uninvited guests. Just when she thought the cacophony of laughter would drown her completely, the door burst open, splintering into a dozen shards. With her eyes wide, Nora knew the time for thinking was over. What could she do? Tommy! She screamed, lunging toward him, ready to shield her son from whatever came next. That's when a new voice emerged, one that sent a shock through her veins. We're here to play a different game this time. And as the darkness rushed inside, it felt like the beginning of a new nightmare, one that promised to be more terrifying than she could imagine. Could they survive this game? What new terror lay in wait as the shadows swirled around them? Nora's breath caught in her throat as the shadows flooded in, twisting and writhing like serpents unleashed. The room darkened to an almost impenetrable black, and the air thickened with a sweet, sickly stench that clawed at her nostrils. Tommy, run! She shouted, desperate to break the paralysis coursing through her limbs. But he didn't move. His small frame trembled in the corner of the closet, his eyes reflecting pure terror. The laughter swelled around them, a cacophony of mocking voices that sent ice through Nora's veins. It felt like they were being pulled into the darkness, like puppets on strings, bound to the whims of whatever loomed in their midst. Light flickered unexpectedly, sending shadows dancing maniacally across the walls. For a heartbeat, she glimpsed shapes, faces twisted in twisted expressions, mouths wide in silent screams. Were they once like her? Mom! Please! Tommy's plea cut through her fear, propelling her forward despite the chills settling in her bones. She lunged back toward the closet, reaching for her son as darkness encroached closer, encircling them like a hungry beast. Stay behind me! She commanded, the urgency crashing through her own fear. There was no time to lose. As she stepped inside, the weight of her grandfather's words roared in her mind, don't let them take what is yours. The darkness backed away momentarily, as if drawn by an unseen force, revealing the cracked threshold where the door had been. Nora took Tommy's hand with a fierce grip, ready to bolt, but shadows pooled around them like water, viscous and oppressive. Playtime, playtime. They sang, a discordant chant that sent her pulse racing as it stole away her thoughts. Reverberations of otherworldly promises tugged at her senses, warping the reality around her. Panic twisted in her stomach. This was no ordinary fear. "Tommy," she whispered, urgency sharpening her voice, "we have to break the game." Turning, she saw that the shapes in the shadows had merged, forming a massive figure that loomed above them. It shimmered like a mirage, shifting and swaying, as if it held the very essence of nightmares. Its eyes glowed, hollow voids that drew her in, promising salvation if she'd just submit. The voices chanted louder, drowning out her resolve. "Join us, join us. Let the game begin." She felt Tommy's grip tighten on her hand. Clinging to his innocence, she clung to the thought that a way out existed, that the rules of the game somehow rested within her own grasp. But the shadows encircled them like a noose growing tighter, and dread seeped into her heart. In a split second, while the darkness momentarily receded, she raced toward the back door. The winds howled, and the spectral laughter throbbed beneath the noise, a dissonant melody that clawed at her mind. Now or never. She roared, knowing any hesitation would seal their fate. She threw open the door, but what lay beyond wasn't the forest they fled to. It was a twisted path of gnarled trees and gruesome faces, all watching, waiting. This wasn't escape, it was another layer of the nightmare. "Mom!" Tommy shrieked in horror as he recognized the sinister form stepping closer, mouth stretching into rictus grins. Nora pulled him close, terror flooding her senses. "Stick close." But was it already too late? The world outside beckoned them into its depths, an invitation to plunge deeper into madness. But danger lurked, waiting for the moment to strike, a malicious hunger they could feel. Just as they took their first steps forward, the ground beneath them trembled. Dark tendrils shot out, trying to ensnare them. "Let us see how well you can play." The voice pulsated from everywhere and nowhere, shaking the very essence of their reality. The shadows tightened. They were in the game now, and only survival was at stake. Would they be able to escape this twisted playground of despair? Or would the shadows claim them as part of their sinister collection? Nora's heart pounded fiercely as she glanced back, feeling time slip away. Where would the next step lead? The ground beneath them quaked violently, the dark tendrils reeling and thrashing like vipers, each one driven by a malevolent force eager to drag them into the abyss. Nora yanked Tommy backward, but the shadows acted with a speed that chilled her bones. "Don't let go!" she yelled, her heart hammering in her chest. She felt a surge of primal instinct, screaming through her that they must run, that movement was their only hope. They stumbled forward, the path narrowing and warping with every hurried step. The gnarled trees surrounding them seemed to close in, branches like skeletal hands, grasping with a hunger that echoed the nameless terror chasing them through the darkness. It wasn't just a game anymore, it was a nightmare that twisted reality, pushing against the fragile grip of sanity. "Mom, where are we?" Tommy's voice trembled, filled with an anxious quaver that broke Nora's heart. "We're getting out. Just hold on," she replied, though uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. The air was thick with despair. Every breath she took seemed to weigh heavier than the last, and the stench of something rotting permeated their escape. Was it a warning? A promise? The laughter returned, louder, mocking, echoing against the trees. "Come play with us," they chanted, voices layered like a hypnotic symphony. Something shifted in the shadows, an electric thrill sparking in the ambience. It was as if the darkness had a heartbeat, alive, breathing, intent on consuming them. Tommy's small hand slipped from hers, the grip of terror breaking in the chaos. "Mom!" he screamed, eyes wide and pleading. "No!" She reached out, her fingers grazing his arm just as a dark shape lunged forward, snatching him back with a grasp that felt like ice. In her gut, a raw panic ignited. She felt as if she were being ripped apart by the relentless shadows. "Tommy!" she cried, her voice cracking under the weight of despair. The shadows seemed to swirl, forming a wall of static between them. Tommy was still there, and she could see him, but something flickered around him, distortions morphing his small body into something indistinguishable. "Mommy, help." His voice was pure and yet warped, as if trapped in a cruel echo. The world tilted, the chaos morphing into a fleeting moment of clarity. Nora recalled her grandfather's words, scraping by the edges of her memory like raw nails on wood. "You must break the cycle." A frantic idea ignited within her, blurring the line between fear and a desperate hope. "Tommy!" she shouted, her voice almost pleading. "You have to listen. We're stronger together. Remember the games we used to play? We can't let them win." A frostbite chill crept along her spine, each word tugging at something deep in the shadows. They twisted and lurched in discomfort, recoiling as if physically scorched. "Join us," they hissed, but now there was a tremor in those words, a falter that told Nora their hold was weakening. "Hold on to who you are," she screamed, focusing all her will into that one thought. "We won't play by their rules." His eyes shone like lanterns, a flicker of recognition breaking through the haze of shadows suffocating him. "Mom," he whispered, hope creeping back into his voice. "Yes, join us." The voices pleaded, their tone vibrating with eager malice. In that dangerous moment, something shifted. The tendrils began to recoil, the grasp loosening. Tommy stepped forward, breaking that final barrier. A sudden pulse of energy erupted between them, pushing back the encroaching shadows. The laughter turned discordant, a haunting wail rising in pitch, echoing like a funeral dirge. "Now!" Nora roared, lunging toward Tommy, their hands connecting strongly, a lifeline against the dark. Together, they charged through, the pair lighting up the spectral gloom around them, but not all shadows were ready to let go. As they pushed forward, a figure loomed in the distance, its shape coalescing into a grotesque form that shifted in and out of focus. Nora's heart dropped. This was no ordinary fear, it was something far worse, something that held the keys to their nightmarish playground. "Welcome to the family," the shadow crooned, leaning in with a smile that sliced through the air. The path suddenly twisted, opening up into an impossible horizon that beckoned them forward. But would it lead to salvation, or was it another trap? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, as they prepared to confront the sinister truth lurking in the shift of the light. As they pushed through the veil of darkness, Nora and Tommy stumbled into a clearing that felt infinitely larger than the confines of the twisted woods they had escaped. The air was stagnant, holding secrets so dense they nearly suffocated her. A sickly sweetness clung to the breeze, reminiscent of decay and despair, tainting the very essence of survival. "What is this place?" Tommy whimpered, his small body trembling as he clung to his mother's side. The amalgamation of terror and fatigue pressed down on her with relentless weight, and she fought to keep her composure. "Stay close," she urged, scanning the perimeter for the grotesque shadow that had tried to ensnare them. The laughter had faded, leaving an echoing silence that buzzed like a furious bee, intensifying her unease. Before her, looming trees framed an odd gathering of figures draped in tattered white cloth, their faces obscured by hoods that appeared almost ethereal. They moved in a languid rhythm, swaying as if guided by an unseen force. Nora felt a shiver prick her skin. "Mom, I don't like this," Tommy said in a hushed tone, uncharacteristically subdued. Her heart raced. "Neither do I, but we can't turn back now. We have to keep moving." Yet, something drew her closer to the figures, an inexplicable pull like a moth to a flame. As they inched forward, a chilling realization washed over her, these were not mere people. Hollow eyes stared from the depths of their hoods, and she could see the flickering glow of flickering lights, like candles trapped within the cadaverous forms. "Join us, dear family," one figure intoned, voice sickly sweet, slithering into her mind like a vine. "Family?" she echoed, a wave of revulsion surging through her. Her grandfather's warnings echoed in her brain, twisted into sharp, painful reminders. Nora turned to Tommy, feeling a surge of protectiveness. "We are not part of your family." Her voice erupted, a jolt of defiance breaking through the grasp of dread, but the figures leaned closer, the air thickening with their chants. You don't remember, do you? You play their game, and your blood deepens the bond. The shadows flickered around them, echoing the words, and for a moment, Nora felt her resolve weakening. She could almost see the family they spoke of, her grandfather's twisted laughter merging with the chant, pulling her into visions of family gatherings long gone, veiled in memories she had locked away. No! She shouted, shaking her head violently as if that could snap her back to the present. Memories don't dictate who I am. Tommy was tugging her wrist, but she could feel the thrumming pulse of the darkness wrapping around her once more. Mom! We gotta go. In a sudden burst of awareness, she turned on her heel, glancing back at Tommy, who bore a haunted look. We're not trapped here, we make our own way. She began pulling him through the ghostly figures, ripping through their thrumming energy like a blade through flesh. Leave them, one of the figures hissed, the ethereal voice slicing through the air. They belong to us now. Fury ignited within Nora, feeding off the fear that had nearly consumed her. No. We're free. She forced herself to keep moving, nearly dragging Tommy as she raced through the gathering, heads turning toward them in slow, deliberate unison, eyes empty but relentless. Then the ground beneath them trembled again, shaking the very air. A low rumble echoed from within the trees, a voice rich with malice. You will play with us forever. A chilling fog rolled in, enveloping them like fingers of despair. Just as they neared the edge of the clearing, Nora panted, we can't stop. Keep running. As they emerged from the veneer of malicious spirits, a wall of darkness fell behind them, a sweep of malevolence intent on reclaiming what it had lost. But lurking at the edges of the clearing, a faint glint of light beckoned them forward, a trembling whisper of hope in the all-consuming night. Mom, what if it's a trap? Tommy's voice quivered as they paused, faced with the choice. Nora felt the shadows closing in again, fury and dread mirrored in her heart. We have to find out. And with one last glance at the grasping tendrils of darkness, they surged toward the glimmer, unaware of the haunting truth waiting just beyond the light. The light felt like a lifeline, its glow cutting through the fog that clung to the air like a shroud. Nora and Tommy stumbled toward it, the radiance pulsating like a heartbeat, urging them forward. Each step felt heavier as the shadows clawed at their heels, ragged breaths escaping her lips as they sped up. The dark whisper sang behind them, promising doom. Don't look back. She commanded, her voice fierce, bolstering her own faltering courage. Tommy obeyed, though his fingers trembled against her own. They burst through the last tendrils of gloom, colliding into the warmth of the light's embrace, but it was far from safe. They stood at the edge of a narrow path that wound through a tangle of trees, illuminated by the same eerie glow. Ahead, the path twisted into the heart of the forest, a sickly green light flickering through the leaves like ghostly fireflies. Strange cries echoed from deeper within the woods, and the scent of rot wafted to them. What is this place? Tommy breathed, eyes wide with both wonder and fear. Nora squatted to his level, scanning the area with a mix of dread and curiosity. I don't know, but we have to keep moving. They couldn't turn back. The figures were right behind them, the shadows alive with malice and manipulation. The path felt wrong, as if the very earth beneath them was listening, waiting. The air thickened, every sound amplified: the snap of a branch, the rustling of leaves, the low hum beneath their feet. Something was watching, she could feel its gaze crawling across her skin. Small glimmers of hope quickly faded. As they walked, the path twisted tighter around them, leading to darker thickets that whispered secrets of despair. Mom, I don't like this, Tommy murmured again, shivering. Me either, Nora replied, feeling the unease bloom inside her. She couldn't shake the feeling their every word had been heard. Just stay close, honey. But the whispering voices began to rise around them, echoing words she didn't know but felt intertwined with her bones. Come home, they slithered through her mind like liquid shadows, igniting a cold fire deep in her soul. Nora's heart raced, panic clawing at her throat. Tommy, don't listen to them. Keep moving. They picked up their pace, but the path darkened, suffocating and claustrophobic. It felt alive, shifting as if to funnel them deeper into its dark heart. Suddenly, Tommy squeaked a startled scream. "Look out!" Nora turned sharply, catching a glimpse of a large figure stumbling through the trees, covered in grime and tangled roots, a grotesque version of the figures they had fled. Its eyes glinted with sinister hunger, locked onto her son. In a rush of adrenaline, she dove forward, grappling Tommy's wrist to yank him out of the creature's reach. They stumbled back, falling into the damp soil as the monster lunged forward, dirt flying as its jagged teeth clattered with an inhuman fury. "Run!" she shouted, dragging Tommy back to his feet, but the glimmer of the light was fading, swallowed by the looming dread. Together, they bolted down the twisting path, heartbeats thudding in sync with the primal dread that lurked behind. "This is all your fault," Tommy cried, terror in his wide eyes. "What? How is this my fault? Grandpa said you shouldn't have come here." The accusation cut deep, and with it came a chilling reminder of her grandfather's words: they were never meant to return, the family bonds forever twisted in this cursed land. As they raced, she could hear the creature behind them, its raspy breath growing closer. It was gaining ground. "Don't look back, Tommy." But he couldn't help it. In a fleeting glance over his shoulder, he gasped, and horror washed over his face. "It's getting closer." The air pulsed with a new darkness, swirling so thick that they could barely breathe. Nora pressed on, fear propelling them forward, the faint hope still flickering within the distance. If they could just reach that light and escape these woods. But just ahead, something emerged from the shadows. A figure stood beneath the sickly trees, waiting with outstretched arms. Its hooded face impossible to read. "Come home, dear family," the voice twisted through the air. And Nora froze, her gaze locked onto the figure, that same thrumming call echoing in her heart. "Mom." Tommy's voice trembled beside her, uncertainty clawing at his resolve. "Don't," but the words faded, lost in the sinister lullaby of the woods. Nora felt the pull again, stronger than before, like quicksand more than a beacon. She could almost feel the answers waiting here, the truth behind her cursed ancestry, the darkness tethering her to this place. But at what cost? In that moment, as the forest inhaled, she knew she had to choose. Embrace the shadows or fight for their salvation. As she hesitated, the figure began to shift, the anticipation pooling like venom in the air. "Make your choice now," and the darkness surged toward them, hungry and primal, as Nora felt the ground tremble violently beneath her feet. What would she decide in the face of her grandfather's legacy? The choice hung heavy, suffocating the last spark of hope. Nora's heart raced, the thrum of the forest echoing in sync with the choices that crackled in the air. The figure before them seemed to swell, its shadow growing long and dark. "Make your choice now," the voice lured, soft as silk yet edged with malice. "Mom, please." Tommy's small hand clutched at her sleeve, eyes wide with panic. She could feel the weight of his fear, heavy as the mist that swirled around them, threatening to consume them whole. The thing in the shadows, waiting, its outstretched arms beckoned like a lover, but its intentions dripped with the threat of betrayal. What did this creature want? Did it offer protection or imprisonment? The ancestral pull tangled with the instinct to protect her son. The forest's whispers wrapped around her mind, winding tighter. "Don't listen to it, Nora." A voice rang inside her, the echo of her grandfather's warnings reverberating through her mind. She hesitated, battling the urge to reach out, to uncover the secrets of her lineage, secrets she had never wanted to know. "Mom," Tommy's voice trembled, a fragile wisp. "We have to go." "Right," she replied, forcing her feet to move as the shadows lunged like wolves. They sprinted forward, the repulsion feeding her resolve even as the call of the figure clawed at her senses, sweet as honey but venomous at the core. Branches scraped against her arms, and roots threatened to trip them as they barreled down the narrow path. The cries of the forest followed, an eerie chorus of lament and promise. Join us," Tommy stumbled, nearly falling, but Nora caught him just in time, their momentum shaky but vital. They weaved past grotesque tree trunks gnarled like twisted fingers reaching for them, as if the forest itself wanted to retain their secrets. "Mom, it's right behind us." Tommy's voice broke through her concentration, and she couldn't help but glance back for a fleeting second. The creature loomed large, its eyes glowing like embers in the dark. It appeared to pulse with life, skin mossy and slick, as though birthed from the very rot they smelled. "It calls for you, come home." The word stung, igniting a coil of dread deep in her belly. She pushed harder, the path twisting unnaturally, shifting as if trying to drown them in despair. "We need to find the way out of here." Hadn't she just seen the flicker of light again? "No. Don't stop to look. Just run." The trees towered above them, jagged silhouettes in the dim light. The ground quaked with each heavy breath, the monster gaining, almost tasting their fear. Suddenly, the path forked. To the right, a gnarled tree bulged with shadows. To the left, a clearing glimmered faintly, a strange light beckoning them to safety. "Choose, Nora." "Which way?" Tommy urged, panic igniting his voice. "Right or left?" The words burst out, mixing with the sounds of the darkness creeping closer. She paused, her heart pounding with indecisiveness. Would either route lead to freedom or doom? The creature's breath hot, rancid snatched at her thoughts. She could feel the weight of its stare, probing her very essence. "Mom!" Tommy's scream jolted her back to reality. "Left!" she shouted, determination flaring as she yanked his arm, racing toward the light. But as they sprinted, the forest groaned, and the ground beneath them tripped violently, sending both of them tumbling into a hidden hollow. They landed with a soft thud, and the world momentarily spun in silence. Just as Nora gathered her bearings, a small shimmer caught her eye at the edge of the clearing. It pulsated like a heartbeat, the ghostly light promising a way out. "Over there, Tommy." She pointed with renewed hope, but that hope faded into dread as she realized the shadow of the monster loomed over them, cutting off their escape. "You're not leaving yet," it growled, words dripping like poison. Trapped and breathing heavily, with nowhere left to run, Nora felt the suffocating weight of the decision pushing down on her, the figure and its sinister promise echoing in her mind. "Mom!" Tommy trembled, grasping her tightly, as darkness hung between them like a storm cloud ready to burst. This time, would she embrace the dark heritage? Or would she defy it for her son? The darkness writhed closer. An ominous clicking sound filled the hollow. Something was inwardly shifting, strange shapes forming between the trees. And as the echoes twisted into an eerie silence, the ultimatum pressed down like an ominous fog. Choose now. With her heart racing and her spirit wavering, she felt the weight of the darkness sink into her very bones. What lay beyond that light? Would it lead to salvation or further damnation? In that moment, standing between two worlds, she realized there was no turning back. What choice would Nora make when the shadows finally closed in? Nora's heart raced in a way she had never felt before. The darkness loomed, creeping ever closer, pulsating with malice. "Choose now," echoed in her mind, muffled by the fear surging through her body. She glanced down at Tommy, his frightened gaze locking onto hers. "We have to go through the light, Mom," Tommy urged, his innocence casting a painful barbed reminder of the stakes, but as she looked toward the glimmer, a chilling thought clawed at her heart. What if that light held the very darkness she had fought against all along? Yet the creature's breath burned hot at their backs, and she knew they had nowhere left to run. She couldn't let Tommy become part of whatever family burden cursed her blood, whatever legacy that promised doom in exchange for belonging. Summoning every ounce of strength, she clenched his hand tightly, determination sparking behind her eyes. "We will not be part of this. Mom!" Tommy's voice trembled, laced with doubt. But something shifted in her, igniting the desperate flame of a protective lioness. With a fierce shout that seemed to shake the very ground beneath them, she charged toward the light. No more games. The moment they reached the luminous radiance, everything erupted into chaos. The glow enveloped them, a warmth washing over her like a summer breeze, pushing back the shadows. But right as they neared the edge of the light, the creature let loose a horrible shriek, clawing and thrashing, desperate to retain its prey. "Tommy, close your eyes!" she shouted, and they both plunged forward into the brilliant light together. As they crossed the threshold, sensations hit them like a rushing wave's sudden silence, a profound stillness, as if the world had momentarily held its breath. They fell to the ground, gasping. "Did we make it?" Tommy whispered, trembling as he grasped his mother's arm. Nora opened her eyes to a clearing, untouched by darkness, bathed in pastel light. The trees here stood tall and strong, their leaves glimmering in a soft, warm breeze. The weight of dread evaporated like mist on a sunny morning. Around them, a chorus of gentle sounds, birds chirping, the rustle of leaves filled the air, banishing the shadows that had pursued them. But as they surveyed their surroundings, Nora's resolve began to falter. Was this freedom? Or a trick of the mind? Suddenly, from the edge of the clearing, the hooded figures began to appear again, their forms shimmering like fading memories. "You cannot escape the family, dear Nora," one intoned, its voice smooth yet dripping with something rancid. "Blood binds. It always finds a way." "No!" Nora shouted, hoisting Tommy protectively behind her. "You can't have him. We're breaking free." Her own voice took on an ancient lilt, echoing words she had resisted until now. With growing defiance, she stepped forward. "I reject what you wish for us. The shadows have no hold after today." The figures began to swirl as if caught in a tempest of anger. "Foolish child. You think the light can save you? You belong to us." Nora held Tommy's hand tighter. "We're not turning back," she declared, feeling a surge of power blossoming in her chest. "The love between us is stronger than your madness." And as she spoke, a wave of light erupted from her, washing over the encroaching figures. Just before it struck them, they twisted and shrieked, dissipating like smoke caught in a fierce wind. "Mom, look!" Tommy shouted, pointing. As the figures shattered into fragments of darkness, the clearing filled with brilliant colors, vibrant and alive. The whispers grew faint, replaced by a hopeful hum. The oppressive weight lifted, revealing an endless expanse before them. They had not only escaped, they would forge a new path. "Is it over?" Tommy asked, his voice soaked in wonder as he beheld the landscape, green and full of life. Nora knelt by his side, brushing her fingers through the soft grass. "Yes, sweetheart. We have to keep moving forward. Away from the shadows." "How far can we go?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Farther than we ever imagined." Together, they stepped into the light, the expanse revealing not just a path but a journey towards new beginnings, fresh memories yet to be made, where the past wouldn't chase them anymore. The Alaskan wilderness felt alive around them, vibrant and radiant, as they took their first steps into a future free of fear. The shadows, distant and powerless, faded into whispers, reminders of what they survived, leaving Nora with a fierce sense of determination. "Tommy, we'll make our own rules from now on," she said, her voice steady. "Together, safe and sound." And the two ventured forth, hearts adorned with hope, knowing they had endured, strengthened, and ultimately prevailed. If you enjoyed this conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will take your breath away. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, because your support makes all the difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. I want to know how you felt about their journey, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's spread this story together.